Hey everyone, this is Doug Kenny, and we welcome David Hamm to Stories from Motorsports. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Doug. How about yourself?
Doing absolutely fabulous. I see you're in your race shop.
I am. I was admiring your backdrop there, but I don't think you're at an actual speedway or anything, are you? But yeah, I'm
Maybe
in
I
my
could be.
yeah. That's cool though. I like that. Yeah, this is an engine I've been working on. This 327 is somewhere around here on my little run-in stand. So, and then I got a few Coors things hanging up because the Coors Light team's always kind of near and dear to my heart with Sterling Marlin and before that Kyle Petty. So kind of where I got my start. That and the Mellow Yellow are I guess, my favorite because that's where I began. You know,
That's pretty cool, man. So,
yeah.
what made you get into racing?
Well, I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I was born at a hospital in Charlotte, but my first 2 years I lived in Concord, within a crow's distance of flying to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. So until I was about 2 years old, and my grandparents lived right down the street. So anytime I went to visit them, they were on Moorhead Road, right down the road from Charlotte Motor Speedway. So I'd always hear the race cars, whether they're testing or racing, and I was just fascinated by it all. My dad was a huge race fan. My grandfather was too, and my dad was Junior Johnson fan back when he was running in the '60s, and then I just started watching it, and I remember watching the 1979 Daytona 500 live on television, and I'm sitting there doing this whenever Donnie and Kel and Bobby got into the fight, the infamous fight at the end of the race, and I just remember that we had a big console TV and a little TV on top of it, and I'm sitting there doing this, at 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, I guess I've been 8 in '79 January. Yeah. So I was just fascinated by it. And then my neighbors raced dirt track, and some family raced dirt tracks. And then I would start going and seeing how the guys were like setting the timing under the hood and on the engines and all that, and just wanted to be one of those guys. So
Pretty
I,
cool.
yeah, he started my dog here joining me. So I ended up I went to college to learn how to work as a dealership technician down in Charlotte at Central Piedmont. And that was my goal all along, was to at least get some good, background automotive experience and learn how to work on everything on the car was my goal. And that would propel me into getting a job in racing. So, and in Charlotte back then, everybody knew somebody that worked in racing. The teams were just starting to move north to Mooresville. So I ended up getting to know some people, and they worked at Sabaco. And I went on my first job interview with Barry Dodson, and then also Jeff Hammond was my first job interview in NASCAR with the Kenny Wallace Dirt Devil car, the 40 car, and I ended up not getting that job. So I went and interviewed with Barry Dodson at their shop in Charlotte over at the off of 49, and ended up getting a job in the machine shop there. So that was how I got started.
Pretty cool. Did you enjoy your years with Sabco?
I did. That was me and the other guys there. Whenever we ended up leaving, like Ganassi bought uh, his part into with Felix Sabatis, and when he did that, it kind of eliminated the engine shop. And I remember we were talking to the other guys there, and we were all saying, we're never going to have another job like this, even though we worked a lot of hours. I mean, I used to say I worked 8 days a week, and I guess there's a song like that. But anyway, yeah, we really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was a great place to work because there was, a great group of people. And back then too, we had the race car in the shop, and we had the engines. We built the engines kind of in the same shop, same location as the race car. So you'd walk out of, you want to go out there to see the car that was going to run that weekend and see your engine in the car, that kind of stuff. That was a cool part of racing back then, versus later on, it was still cool, but you couldn't walk out in the shop and see your engine in a car, because you were doing your engines for another team that was located somewhere else.
I see what you mean. Were you at Sabaco at the time that Robby Gordon drove?
I was, I was his jack man the first year he drove for us in '97. Actually, the first year he drove in November for us in '96 because we went to Japan. And so that'd be a good trivia question. What year did Robby Gordon drive for Sabaco? And so we took a car over there sponsored by Tonka, and Robby Gordon was the driver. And so he ended up wrecking during the wreck. He wrecked in practice, and so the car was filled inside with a bunch of sand and gravel. So he had to climb in there and clean all that out. And then he ended up wrecking and taking stuff out of the race. And I think Rusty Wallace ended up winning that. So then going into '97, I was his jackman in the Coors car, the number 40. And he drove about halfway through the season. He was getting to where almost like he was getting a little rambunctious, like Bristol, I think burned up a rear end gear. And so we got it changed. And then we're like, hey, where'd Robby go? Ready to get back in the car. And he's already got his jeans on, ready to go. And it's like, that's not how this works, you know? So we ended up doing a little switcheroo and put him in the 42 car. Let's see, did we change the number? Yeah, no, it was a sporty car, but we put him to what we call the B team and then moved Nemechek over to the A team. Basically a crew swap, crew chief, all that. We ended up switching. So that was kind of one of those unusual things you don't normally see, but Felix Savalas was good for doing things outside the box, you know.
Okay. Did you see Sabaco's run at Indy in '97 that year?
In '97, Indy. The
Indy 500.
yeah, I'm trying to. Oh, you mean with Robby?
Yeah.
Okay, with Robby, and then he came to then he flew to Charlotte for the 600.
Yeah, and then he got burned at Indy when it was rescheduled.
Yeah, yeah. That I'm gonna have to go back and try to check into my memory banks because it seems like I do remember some of that, but gosh, that was a long time ago. Is that 25 years ago?
I believe it is, yeah.
So yeah, this year. But yeah, I would have been with Robby Gordon then, so, for the Charlotte race, but not Indy.
Okay.
I mean,
So
I was
you
at
went,
the 400, but not the Indy 500.
okay. So you went to Bill Davis afterwards to drive to compete with them?
I went from Sabco to a guy named Carl Wagner come along, and he was doing a lot of cars. He was doing a lot of engines up north, and so he wanted to have a shop down here. The biggest person he was doing engines for was Joe Nemechek, and you know he used to run really good in the Busch series, and I was jackman for him in the late '90s as well. So ended up working there for 1 year, and then I went to work for Bill Davis Racing whenever Ganassi had merged with Felix Abatis and told me if you want to keep a job here, you're going to have to switch over to working in the car shop. And so I told him I didn't want to make that switch. So I ended up going and working in the engine shop. And also back then, the engine shop was kind of where the money was too. So sort of had to go with that. And we had Wagner come along and offered me a job, making more money. And so staying doing engine. And then, but before that, I went to interview with Bill Davis Racing, but they didn't have quite enough. They didn't have enough sponsors and stuff at that point. But after the Homestead race, when I ended up jacking in the Busch Series in 2001, and after the last race of the season, the head engine builder over there told me to give them a call Monday because they got some more cars, more sponsors. So they wanted me to come work out there. So I did for 2 years. I went to work for Bill Davis. And,
Pretty cool.
Ward Burton won the Daytona 500, so that was my first win experience with the Daytona 500.
What was the reaction of the team when he won the 500 that year?
Well, of course, everybody was excited, you know, and we had little get-togethers. There's always food involved in racing. You know, when you win a race, you always have these either a banquet type deal with the food, or a big party. So we ended up having a party. That's another story, but that was a lot of fun. But also had like Gary Hill, who was actually a friend of mine back then. He's an artist, and he did a drawing of yeah a drawing of the win. So he came by and he signed all of our posters, and I still have it in my what do you call them, rollers that you slide a poster into. I still have it in there and never took it out. So it's signed by, I guess, Bill Davis and Gary Hill and Ward Burton. I think I got them all to sign it. I think it's
That's
right up
pretty
here.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. I collect old posters and all the stuff through the years, just hats, cars, and whatever.
Pretty cool. I saw
Yeah,
Sterling Marlin's interview afterwards when he got penalized for pulling that fender, and he was a good sport about it. He was like, I saw Earnhardt do it in a previous race.
yeah. I talked to Sterling about it on the phone about this. It wasn't when I was doing the interview. I was just chatting with him, and I was sitting over here on the couch, and I called him, and he was telling me, he's like, well, I just kind of mentioned that, and I said, he said, I didn't really have much choice. He said I was either going to cut a tire or just get out and pull that fender. So yeah, Sterling's the man. He is a character. Never got too excited. He would, call. He'd get mad sometimes and call people names, but it wasn't anything like serious. There wasn't no cussing and all that. That's that, Dumbo head or something like that. I mean, it was always, we would look at each other in the pits and just kind of start laughing, even though we were upset. He was upset. We'd be like, couldn't help but laugh. The stuff he would say.
That's one thing I've noticed. Sometimes when your sense of humor is so nonsensical, even the offensive things, you're not sure whether to be offended or not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think the more you go through life, especially some of the things you see in racing, you get to where you're like, nothing really surprises you anymore, and it's like, whatever. I've seen worse. you know, you just have to laugh the stuff off. I
Yeah,
kind of do from a lot all the time uh, in my daily life. I guess that's one of the things I picked up from working in racing.
pretty cool. What
Yeah.
incident surprised you most between Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer or Matt Kenseth and Logano?
Uh, let's see. Didn't Logano and Jeff Gordon, when didn't they about get in a fight one time? First, I think Logano's about got in a fight with a lot of different people. Um,
Yeah,
all right, so between Logano and Jeff Gordon, is that what you asked me?
no, Logano and Kenseth.
Oh, Logano and Kansas. Well, the one that surprised me the most was, of course, when Kansas took Logano out, because we were running for the championship that year, and we ended up getting it in 2018. But we were, Kansas was our driver. I mean, I built Kansas engines. Um, 2010, I don't remember. Whatever. Through the years when he was at Roush, I was building his engine, and so he was always a good guy. I had won the first two races, I guess it was, and then going into the third race, ended up breaking the engine, and so he ended up coming to me and saying, he said he thought about me whenever the engine blew. He said he felt bad for me. I'm like, well, that was very nice of him to put that thought into me versus me feeling like it wasn't an engine builder fault. It was a part failure, of course. We had this long story in that, but anyway, the thing that surprised me was whenever he ended up retaliating with Logano, and it's hard to say whether that cost him the championship because I was kind of on the fence whether he was going to really win the championship, but he was running good that day, and that certainly did not help his chances of winning the championship. It hurt him more than anything. So that surprised me that knowing, in other words, Kansas to me has always been like a stand-up, guy. And when he did that, it was like I lost, a couple of respect points for him over that because he wasn't considering the guys that work on the car. Like he claimed to have considered me as an engine builder when the engine blew up. Well, where was that consideration when he put Logano in the wall? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes, it's hard to know whether things are right and wrong when there's like so many complications behind things like that.
yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on him. He's out there driving a race, and the adrenaline's up, and yeah, so can't really. I don't hold it against him now. I mean, it's what it is. It's the way that the hands were dealt. And if I saw him
Yeah.
again, say hey to him and ask him how he's doing, that kind of stuff. But I guess he's going to be in the announcer booth. Looks like.
Yeah, that'll be cool to see his input in these races, and hopefully it could lead to a career in that. That'd be cool.
Maybe so, yeah. Because he definitely will tell it like it is. I mean, he comes across as being like a kind of a shy, quiet, but he's pretty much just straight to the point.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when did you stop racing and move over to your show?
Well, I started doing my show first while I was still building engines, and but it's like as my show grew, and as my love for doing media and radio, videos, that kind of stuff grew, I was like, all right, I don't, you know, I try to focus on, if you're going to be successful, you really have to try to focus on doing one thing and doing it well. So I was having trouble focusing building engines because I kind of fell in love with doing the podcasting, the videos and things like that, and radio. So I just decided my love kind of had, and the way NASCAR changed a little bit. My dad being at home has Alzheimer's, so I wanted to be. He lives with me. I bought a house to where that my parents could live with me about 7 years ago, for that reason. He was showing signs of Alzheimer's, and so I ended up moving him in with me. So for me to be around, I needed to make a change, and that's when I decided to make the change. So I started my own business, did my podcasting stuff, and then about 2 years into it, 3 years into my business here, and then 2 years into my podcast deal, I decided to step away from my NASCAR job, which was a dream job. I mean, it was great. Roush Yates Engines, and congratulations to them for winning the Daytona 500 again. I believe that's 6 Daytona 500s for them. It's 6 or 7, probably 6. But anyway, yeah. So I still talk to my friends over there. I still talk to Doug Yates, and he always wishes me the best, and tells me that we'll get together sometime soon. He's come on my show, and he's great. The whole Yates family has always been wonderful.
Great to hear, and I hope your show gets better. I've learned a lot from it. I saw you had Ted Musgrave on, and I didn't realize he has a nonsensical sense of humor.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? He's some of the things he was saying. He surprised me. Even at the beginning of the show, he just started right out joking around. So yeah, he's good. He's relaxed a lot through the years. He's always kind of been pretty serious, but I think him now working and hanging out with his son a good bit, working on their boats and things over there. I think it's made him, like lighten up and loosen up a little bit and have some fun. He was underrated. As a driver, he's very good. Just didn't have he had some pretty good cars, but he just didn't have the big breaks that a lot of the people get.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's all I have for now, but we'll bring you on again in a few weeks' time for more in depth of your story.
Okay, good. That sounds good.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate that.